you know the story of the Bologna Scroll. So there was this meeting in 1530 between the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope, and one of the things they discussed was King Henry's great problem, which was he wants a divorce. And the Holy Roman Emperor says, well, you know, here in Bologna, we have the original Pentateuch written by Ezra, which is what they believed, is what, you know, they would tell visitors to this church in Bologna. This isn't just a Torah scroll, it's the original one written by Ezra. So they open it up to see, does it have the verse that Henry is citing as his justification for the divorce? And today we have that scroll, and that verse has been erased. Which is really strange because we have an account from 1531 which says they found the verse and decided we don't care what the verse says, we do what the Pope says.
Wow.
So
okay, that's interesting.
So that's interesting that ties into Cambridge, and wow, it's everything ties together.
It's also, I just point out, that's not the original scroll written by Ezra. Because,
no, of course not.
Because that's in the Ben Ezra synagogue.
Oh.
Because that is,
okay.
So that until today, I think, tourists are told that scroll is in the synagogue.
Really?
It was looked at by Adler. When Adler, you know what, he wrote his book, he traveled around Jewish communities of the Middle East, and he wrote his book about Jews of many lands. And he went to the synagogue and he looked at the scroll and he said it's like a 16th, 17th century one.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know about this scroll in the Ben Ezra synagogue.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think it's still there, but...
that's really interesting. So I just heard last week there's a Torah scroll in Germany in a place called Kassel, and it has an inscription there, and I don't remember if it's Latin or German, and it says that this was written before the birth of Christ, although we're not sure how many centuries.
Yeah.
And it's like 14th century or something, right? So this is that's interesting. This is the kind of story that Jews would tell, or maybe Christians would tell as well, about these Torah scrolls. That's really interesting.
Torah scrolls are impressive objects, and so when you see one, you sort of, I can imagine they accrue legends, you know, around.
Well, so the Karaites in Israel in one of the synagogues have a Torah scroll, which they believed was an ancient Torah scroll, and 1,000 or more years old. I don't remember the exact legend. And so I got some photos of it and sent them to some people who know Torah scrolls about dating them. And I want to say it was like a 19th century Syrian scroll or something like that, right? But it's a much better story to say it's 1,000 years old. And look, it was old, right?
Yeah.
But 19th century isn't really that old.
Yeah.
That means this legend couldn't be that old, right? This is a legend probably from the last generation or two, where they're like, oh, this is a really old scroll, and then they project it back further in time. But it shows you how quickly these legends can develop.
You can see that. And maybe, over time the scroll changes, and each time it gets a new, as they throw away the old scroll, this one is the new one, but this one is old.
Or this is the old one we don't use. And then they start to spin stories about when it's from.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and obviously, I think the Ezra scroll in the Ezra synagogue. Ben Ezra becomes associated with Ezra the scribe.
Okay.
But in fact, that name must have been given to it by some Ottoman guy who gave money to rebuild the synagogue. Probably, it's probably
somebody named Ezra.
It's probably some donor.
Okay.
Some rich donor.
So the theory with the Bologna scroll is that when they gave this, because the Jews gave it to the Christians, to actually the the Dominicans, they gave it in 1304 in southern France. And the theory is that the Jews probably explained something like, this is the original format that the Torah was written in by Ezra according to rules that Ezra established. And then that kind of got misconstrued and misunderstood to this was the scroll that Ezra himself wrote.
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe they just made it up. Who knows?
That's it. It's the problem. And the name Ezra always gets, it's sort of, over time, everyone always associates the name Ezra with the Ezra.
Well, in the Talmud, we have the Sifrei HaAzara, the temple courtyard manuscripts of the Torah, and that's corrupted in some manuscripts to the scrolls of Ezra.
Right,
as if Ezra himself wrote them. So.
Yeah.